In this tutorial, we're gonna talk about how to use hold on. Talk about how to use variables. And variables are just containers. And if we were to look, I just have a bunch of comments, and you can read this later. But I'm gonna delete this piece of code right here, and then we're gonna discuss how to use a variable. So a variable is just a container, and you can hold anything in it. It can be numbers, it can be text, it can be instances, which I'll talk about later. It can be anything you want, just as long as you write it properly and you define it properly, and I'll teach you how to do that right now. So to make a variable, all you have to do is type in var, and this tells Flash that you're writing a variable. So it's going to be highlighted in blue, and just so you know, anything in blue is defined in Flash. So if you were to type in var, that name is going to be taken, so you can't use that name ever in your code, or else it's going to be your code's just going to mess up. So make sure you know what you're naming what, and that it's not blue. So then we press space, and then we're going to type in what we want to call this variable. This variable can be named anything you want. It can be it can be a container for a username. It can be a password. It can be anything you want. So we're going to name this, I'm just going to name this username. And then we're going to press space, equals, and then we're going to type in what we want this to equal, and I'm going to put quotation marks to make a string. I'm going to name this Jack. And then just like last time, you want to close it, just like a trace statement, and you just made your first variable. Now, there's something called a data type. If we were to type in colon after username, or whatever your variable is named, you get this list. It's code hinting, and you get all these different types of data types, and this is what you can assign a variable to. A data type is just a type of data. So the type of data this is a string, as I already told you in the last tutorial. So we're going to start typing in string, and if we were to look, it's already in the code hinting, so we can just press enter, and you see that now we have a variable telling, hey Flash, I'm creating a variable. It's going to be called username, and the data type is going to be string, and then we put equal to, equals the equal sign, and what the variable is going to be equal to, and it's going to be equal to the string Jack. If we were to trace this, I'm going to put two quotation marks. Well, actually no. In the parentheses, we're just going to type in username. And if we were to play this movie, it's going to come up as an error. This is happening because we have an access of undefined property username. What this means is that if we were to go back to our code, you see that it's spelled the same, but if we were to look in username, the N in name is capitalized. And the thing is, Flash Actionscript 3.0 is very case sensitive. So when you name your variable, that's going to be the name of the variable you're going to be using for the rest of the code. And if we were to look now in the output window, it says Jack. So let's go back to our code. And the reason this is not in quotation marks is because it's not a string, it's a variable. So if we were to type in the quotation marks around username and play it now, oops, forgot to put the last quotation mark in there. To play this, we just get username instead of the actual name of the user. Now here's something you should know. If you wanted to, you don't have to set the data type. You don't have to. Flash will just recognize the data type by itself, but if you put the data type, your code will run much faster. So it's always good to know the different data types, which we'll be using. So don't worry about learning all of them. I'll teach you how to use the important ones, and the ones that you'll be using in common, like when you make games and websites. So you don't have to worry about that. But I'm going to define it anyway. And you don't have to set the value yet. You can just close it. You can just name it var username string, and then if you wanted to define it later, all you have to do is just type in the name of the of the variable, which is username, and then we're going to make it equal to, and then you could type in the name. If you were to trace this, you'd see that it's working perfectly. And the reason that you want to define it later than now is that maybe you have tons of users and you don't know what it equals to yet. So when the user types in its name, then the username is going to be equal to whatever they typed, and then you can trace to check if it's correct. And that doesn't probably sound right, but that's how you make a variable in Flash.